Hey guys, I've just been chilling in front of this brick wall and nothing much. I sure do hope nobody comes in front of me and shakes me or something. I came in like a dandy. So, class design. Yeah, I have talked a lot in my videos about class design, mostly how to do it poorly. Cough, cough, make it entirely stat-based. But I have never really talked about why it's important for games to design their classes well. I thought it'd be kinda self-explanatory, but a surprising amount of people are just completely okay with lazily slapping together half-baked ideas and calling them a class. Come, let me take you there. Welcome to Two Fort, hey, where everyone calls you slurs if you're gay. First, let me explain what I define as a class and what I define as a class-based game. This is important so nobody stabs me in the comments for not mentioning a game that isn't class-based. A class is a combination of abilities, stats, and whatever else the game wants to change on a character-by-character basis. It really depends on the game, but in general, each class attempts to encourage a different playstyle. A class-based game is a game that has a class structure as a part of its core design, not something just tacked on as an extra feature. A game like TF2 is class-based, since the team dynamics of each class are the core focus of the gameplay. I would also consider games like Risk of Rain 2 to be class-based, as one of the core features of the game are the interesting characters that all have unique playstyles. A game like Terraria, however, is not class-based, since classes are an entirely optional aspect. They act more as different ways to min-max your loadout over different playstyles, as you can freely mix and match them. There's also loadout-based games, a relative of class-based, which are similar but won't be discussed in this video. They focus on combining a bunch of different attributes to build your own whole. This includes games like Dead by Daylight and Minus Elevation. Just getting this out of the way so nobody asks me to talk about those games when they aren't really fitting for the video. Class diversity is one of the main goals you're working towards when designing classes for your game. Each class should feel different to play and offer different ways to interact with the core mechanics. Before I talk about how to achieve this though, why is this even the goal? The main reason you want class diversity is to appeal to a larger audience. People coming into your game will all have different playstyles and skill sets, so being able to cater to them helps. If someone really likes mobility and getting past the front lines, then you can make a class design around that. If someone really likes to sit back and defend your base, then you can make a class design around that. If someone wants to play a sniper, kill them. Kill them now. Of course, not every playstyle will fit your game and should be automatically appealed to. If someone wants the playstyle of stabbing other players in the balls and making it a living hell to go against them, maybe you shouldn't do that. If someone wants a playstyle that completely goes against all the fundamental aspects of your game, you should probably not do that unless there's a very good reason for it existing. Now, how do we achieve class diversity? First, rule number one, limit the number of classes you create. I've seen a lot of games, especially Roblox games with younger developers, create a fuck ton of classes when the game doesn't have enough core mechanics that they can really focus on to justify this. This obviously gives you two options when creating a new class. You either make them take the same niche as another character and potentially make either character pointless to play, or you try leaning into gimmicks which could either work kinda well or result in the dumbest bullshit imaginable. The biggest example I know of to fall into this trap is PvZ2. Yeah, it's technically a class-based game according to my criteria, so I can talk about it. PvZ2 has taken this concept to its true extreme, with there being hundreds of plants that have no reason to exist. Even just talking about the adventure plants, there is so much overlap between classes. The pyro plants especially are the worst example of this, most being just objectively better versions of plants you get earlier on. Genuinely, is there even a reason to use regular sunflower later in the game after you unlock twin sunflower, primal sunflower, sunshroom, and moonflower? These are all objectively better options than the base sunflower. Now let's flip that on its head and talk about PvZ1, which is the exact opposite. PvZ1 limits itself pretty well in how many classes it created, with each having a specific niche. Obviously, there's a few stinkers in there like cactus, but everything else has a specific niche. Sun production has only 3 options: sunflowers, twin sunflowers, and sunshrooms. They each have a specific upside and downside to picking them in your loadout. Sunflowers are the safe pick. They generate an average amount of sun and generally are always reliable. Sunshrooms have the niche of levels where you can no longer rely on your natural sun production, aka night level. They allow you to set up your production at essentially double the rate, but are limited by the fact they produce sun significantly slower. Twin sunflowers are the high risk, high reward solution here. They require you to use an extra slot for regular sunflowers, as well as costing significantly more. However, they offer a greater reward and can pay for themselves much quicker. Rule 2. Each class must have enough depth in their playstyle for it to feel different to use compared to other classes. By depth, I essentially mean having options. Take Mario's jump for example. You're able to jump over pits, attack enemies, and break blocks. This has versatility. However, versatility does not instantly mean depth. A good way to tell if you have a good amount of versatility is if you know when to not use it. Take the same Mario example. There are places where you could jump to, but it'd either be too risky or will outright kill you. There are actual decisions to make. TF2 is probably the best example of this. Each class has enough depth to their kit that they form a specific niche and playstyle. Let's use Medic as an example. Medic is one of the best healers I've ever seen in a game. Ever. Actually, fuck it. They're one of the best support classes in gaming. Their depth comes from two major factors: their heal and their uber charge. The heal itself has quite a bit of depth just on its own. You're able to overheal people who are at max HP, essentially giving them temporary armor against attacks. This is cool, but so that you aren't just spamming heals on maxed out targets, healing is actually faster on people who weren't hit recently. This means during battle, you are constantly juggling targets and need to think about who to prioritize. You can see in this instance that depth does not directly mean complexity. It just means giving people options to weigh and strategize over. And the Uber Charge. The main reason I call this the best support class ever. The Uber Charge is your reward for keeping yourself alive and strategizing correctly, as the meter fills up faster if you heal people who are either injured or under the max overheal. Once you've filled up your Uber Charge, you can give you and the target you are healing 8 seconds of full invulnerability. This not only feels like an insanely hype moment, but also gives a reason to play more risky on the front lines, where it would normally be more beneficial to play it safe. You will get more Uber Charge if you actively heal people on the front lines and put yourself at risk, which requires a lot more skill than sitting behind a wall and healing people that come to you. This not only adds more depth to the playstyle through risk management, but also adds a higher skill ceiling than Medic. A high-level Medic player can get much more out of the class and trigger Uber Charge much more, supporting their entire team in their process. One more thing I should mention is healing decay. Essentially, medics will heal faster if the patient hasn't been hit for a while. This may seem a bit counterintuitive at first. Why would you make it so people who are actively on the battlefield would get healed slower? Well, this exists as a countermeasure for stalemates. If this didn't exist, you would very easily be able to heal a tank actively taking damage and counteract that said damage. This would basically create a situation where both sides want a healer and a tank at the center of the battle, with both tanks essentially dealing 0 damage to each other. This is just boring as hell, so healing decay just exists to counteract this. Overwatch actually didn't have this feature for the longest time, meaning this exact scenario happened in almost every match. Overwatch L. Healing is obviously still useful with decay. Either way, if you want to design a good support class, look at the Medic. You want to know what the worst example of this is?
How is that much different from Gordy, for example?
Yep, that's right. This is the contractually required Danny's World mention of this video. It's a game so bad, you can use it in literally any context as a perfect example of how not to design a game. I hate my life. Danny's World has one of the worst class systems I have ever seen. They intentionally limit themselves to 1 or 2 abilities per character, with each ability having less depth than a deflated kiddie pool. For some reason, the stats are the priority for each character, but even those aren't done well, as the extraction and speed stat are objectively better to have than the other 3 stats. Let's take someone like Gordy as an example. What options does he have with his kit? Well, his main ability can't be strategized around since it's completely random, so there's no reason not to just spam it whenever. His passive ability is just a speed boost on floor end and start, making the other characters whose purpose is to give speed boost redundant with no effort required. What about his stats? Newsflash, buddy, every character has stats. His stats are just min-maxed to have low in the bad stats and high in the good stats. What playstyle is Gordy even supposed to encourage? Thanks to his stats, he's literally just amazing at everything. He extracts super fast and can move between machines quicker than most extractors, so he's an amazing extractor. But he can also outwalk enemies and aggro them super easily since he has low stealth and high speed, so he's also a distractor. I already explained why having overlap like this is bad class design. You're invalidating every other class in the game by making one of them that just does everything better. Also, I'm 90% sure Gordy was meant to be a support character, which he just isn't. His 2 abilities can technically support people, but they require so little thought, it gives such a minuscule reward that they just end up relying on their stats instead, which, as I mentioned, are not well designed. Now for rule 3. Use your brain cells. Okay, time to talk about a really weird trend in class design that I've seen literally everywhere. It just doesn't make any sense to me why people make stuff this way. What I'm referring to is designing classes around a character's design and personality. This is one of the most common mistakes I've seen, and it's insanely common with Roblox games, particularly dandy-likes. My favorite genre. Designing classes to fit a character instead of designing them around a playstyle is always doomed to fail. Yes, obviously the kits you design shouldn't be completely different from the character, that'd make it really weird, but you should choose a central playstyle to design around before actually making the kit. Let me get a pretty good example. Jane Doe. They have an overly complicated health system and the ability to stun the killer. Their only other ability being a way to increase the stun length. They're literally just Shiletsky but overly complex. The entire reason behind her abilities are just lore implications. Oh my gosh, she wants to cure John Doe, so she has bottles she made that help debuff the killer. Oh, suck my fat belly. Oh, she wants to kill John and put him out of his misery, so she swings her axe. It's just really lazy. I also need to talk about Fantasia, who isn't as bad, but that's just because they have a smaller kit. Their two abilities literally have no cohesion at all. Why would a healer need to track where enemies are? Healers aren't supposed to directly engage with enemies, they're supposed to engage with people they are trying to heal. And their active has the same depth problem as Gordy. Why would you ever want to not use it? The person who designed them was probably like, is there a unicorn who does magic so they could random people or heal them because they suck at magic? And they have future vision as a power so they can see enemy paths. I'm so smart. It literally just Mary Sue game design. There's nothing inherently wrong with designing a kit off of a character. The problem is making that the priority over fleshing out a coherent playstyle first. Try thinking of what niche they're meant to fill first, before moving on to abilities and how they mesh with specific mechanics. After that, base the character's personality around their kit. Don't just rush into adding your OCs into the game because you think they're cool. That's how we get situations like Dandy's World. I think that's all I have to say about class design. Please, for the love of God, Delver-like devs, can you make good classes for once in your life? It is not that hard!